This is the grant proposal for the biogeoclimatic zone of the boreal black and white spruce by Brenna Price and Jessica Davies. As a part of the boreal forest system, this zone exists across northern British Columbia, reaching down into the central and eastern interior. The extent of this forest is vast, covering provinces from coast to coast. Holding title for the largest BEC zone, it covers 16.3% of BC's landmass, with 10% of that being the two subzones MW1 and 2. It can be found from the bottoms of valleys up to 1,300 meters in elevation, but the majority of this zone is found at elevations above 600 meters. It encompasses the communities such as Dease Lake, Atlin, Fort Nelson, Fort St. John, and Telegraph Creek, just to name a few. Here we can see the extent of how far this zone reaches across Canada, all the way from the top of the Yukon to the bottom right corners of Quebec and the coast of Newfoundland and Labrador. But the extent of the boreal reaches far beyond North America, circling the northern hemisphere. It covers the northern areas of Europe and Asia, as seen here. This map refers to the 4 subzones within the boreal white and black spruce zone. The subzones range from having dry to very wet precipitation regimes and generally have cold temperature regimes, except for the MW subzone having a relatively warm temperature. On the eastern side of this zone, it can be observed it dives south by the Alberta border, reaching past the town of Tumbler Ridge. The Alberta Plateau is east of the Rockies and represents 10% of the total zone area. It's an extension of the Great Plains from Alberta. This region has high agricultural production value due to its favorable climate, large floodplains, and lacustrine soils with a fine texture free of rocks.
Being in the northernmost areas of the province, the climate in this zone is, as you can imagine, cold and dry. The boreal white and black spruce climate ranges from cold continental to hypercontinental, meaning that there are long, cold winters, minimal snowfall and precipitation, slow vegetation growth, and areas of permafrost. The closest zone with similar characteristics is the spruce, willow, birch. We can see in these 2 graphs, one for Fort St. John, the other for Fort Nelson, that this region averages low precipitation and temperature, barely exceeding 20 degrees Celsius in the hottest months and diving to a cool minus 20 degrees in the winter. Next, we'll take a look at the most common soil orders present in boreal white and black spruce. As we can see, the dominant soil orders for the eastern side of the zone are cryosolic, luvasolic, and organic, represented by the swirling purple, cream, and pink around the Fort Nelson lowlands. This area is a mixture of forest and wetland ecosystems. Due to low average temperatures and the buildup of bog vegetation, permafrost and glycols are also present. In the grasslands, brunasolic soils are found, as well as small islands of chernozemic soils along the Alberta border. Let's take a look at the dominant ecosystem types found in this zone. The grassland and scrub ecosystems of boreal white and black spruce are an important aspect of the landscape as they contain plants found nowhere else in BC and are important habitat for ungulates, which use the grasslands and scrub areas to feed. In the summer, berry patches provide food for bears and birds. These valuable ecosystems are endangered by hydroelectric projects, oil and gas extraction, and expanding agriculture. Wetlands and muskegs are found in the northeast with poorly drained soils. A muskeg is a peat bog created from a combination of fens and bogs. Here you will find stunted black spruce and tamarack, as well as permafrost buried deep beneath layers of peat. Upland forests are usually mixtures of trembling aspen and white spruce with some lodgepole pine in more eastern sites. True to its name, this zone is dominated by black and white spruce, accounting for almost half of species composition. On this slide, we have 4 common site configurations of the boreal white and black spruce. Moving on to wildlife. Moose, mule deer, and caribou are widespread throughout this zone. You will also find white-tailed deer to the east and Rocky Mountain elk, stone sheep, and mountain goats to the west. There are also high populations of black bear, grizzly bear, and gray wolves. Some birds, such as the black-throated green warbler, white-throated sparrow, rose-breasted grosbeak, broad-winged hawk, and blue jay are almost exclusively found in this zone. There are a total of 44 blue-listed species residing in the boreal white and black spruce zone, including the northern long-eared myotis and Dall's sheep. There are also 23 red-listed species, including caribou, upland sandpiper, and the wood bison. Let's expand a bit on the wood bison. Wood bison are endemic to Canada and in BC are found to the east of the Rocky Mountains in the peatlands and grasslands. They rely on sedges and grasses found here as their main food source. Threats of main concern to the wood bison are crossbreeding, habitat loss, and disease. Tuberculosis and brucellosis have been present in bison populations since the 1920s, and current counts estimate that only around 50% of wild and captive bison are disease-free.
Resource opportunities in this region include forestry. Though historically this zone is not the highest producer of lumber products, it is gaining traction as trembling aspen and balsam poplar are becoming more commonly used. This is in conjunction with new technologies available to make use of smaller log sizes and products we can create. The few commercial species in this region are lodgepole pine, white spruce, and trembling aspen. The lack of higher production from this zone stems from the expansive areas having poorly drained wetlands, limiting the ability to produce the desired commercial species. There are selected sites able to support the desired trees, such as south-facing slopes for lodgepole pine. The majority of this work is done in the winter months, as it is easier to work on the frozen ground due to the quantity of wet sites where the trees are found. Hunting and fishing are common recreational activities in this zone. Trapping is also steady, with animals such as foxes, martens, and lynx sought after in the winter months, and beaver and muskrat in the springtime. There are oil and gas exploration activities throughout the zone, surveying for potential sites. Seismic surveying has occurred in many parts of the zone, leaving behind lines from blasting operations. Agriculture is common in the southern end of the zone due to the ideal conditions for grain production and grazing areas. Alluvial plains and morainal deposits create ideal soil fertility along with the absence of large stones, thus creating a fine textured soil composition great for agricultural purposes. The rest of the zone is incapable due to poorly drained organic soils and undesirable climate conditions. The range use generally occurs in successional forests such as aspen. There is an extensive list of indigenous groups within this zone. I will be touching on the Deneta and the Kaska First Nation groups. Historically, the Deneta First Nation led a nomadic lifestyle. They eventually congregated in family-based log cabin settlements. They would go between cabins following the hunting patterns throughout the seasons. They had and still have a heavy hand in fur trades with the Northwest Company. To follow the animal migrations, dog teams were used. The dogs were held in high regard, usually being fed before the trapper would eat. Many of the migratory routes historically used by the Deneta group are now modern-day roads. Moose was an important animal to the Deneta culture, and a method used to hunt moose would be to send a hunter ahead to kill it. Then a group would follow promptly to dry the meat and tend to the hide. Hunting would start in the summer and run through the fall. Trappers of the Deneta trapped for lynx, fox, marten, muskrat, and beaver. In regards to spirituality, a ceremony titled the Tea Dance would be performed for burial ceremonies and during meetings with surrounding communities. They can also be induced when shamans had a dream and needed to conduct the ceremonies for good weather or for a plentiful hunting season. Grave sites varied from the deceased being put into coffins in trees, which usually concerned children, to being put into hollowed-out trees or wrapped in canvas and buried by rivers or trails. Later on, the tradition of spirit houses were put by grave during a ceremony 1 year after a death. Cascadena territory pre-contact was roughly 240,000 square kilometers, covering areas of the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. Their territory that fell on BC covered about 10% of BC's landmass. The Cascadena have descended from 5 Casca groups. Tuchoga Nuga Dao, meaning big water dwellers. Se Tao Tina, meaning mountain dwellers. Ispa Tadina, meaning dwellers among the wild goats. The Na'a Titoa Gotena, meaning dwellers at a sharp mountain where a little river starts. And the Tse Lona, meaning mountaintop. Cascadena culture is very much alive today. There's a Cascadena drumming group, and it was formed in the later 1980s, and they perform traditional songs. They have performed at many events within Canada, ranging from Vancouver to Whitehorse. Some other programs that the Cascadena have started is the management of morel harvest on Casca ancestral territory, as well as wildlife and land stewardship programs. Here we can see some beautiful artwork made by Casca artists. And this is a significantly large treaty, Treaty Number 8, and it has a large part of the landmass within the Boreal White and Black Spruce Zone. The nations included in Treaty 8 are Doig River, Halfway River, Prophet River, Salto, West Moberly, and Fort Nelson First Nations.
Here are a few of the possible effects that climate change may have on the boreal white and black spruce. Though increasing temperatures may aid in the reproduction of spruce forests, the negatives outweigh the potential benefits by decreasing the area of suitable climate for spruce, availability of lichen as a food source for caribou, and by moving faster than the rate of migration possible for the species. According to a report from 2016 by Dr. Karen Price and Dave Dost, the boreal white and black spruce zone will likely experience a growth in its grassland habitats due to rising temperatures and an increase in fires. These changes may benefit species that rely on the grasslands for food and habitat, though accompanying challenges may include an increase in tick and invasive species populations.
We are proposing the Wood Bison Enhanced Surveillance Program. We need the grant money to ensure the future of a healthy and expanding wood bison population in the boreal white and black spruce zone. Our goal is to surveil the current populations to determine health conditions and monitor changes to their food sources and tick encroachment. As seen on the map, we have disease-free wood bison populations in BC with small range areas, though they are reaching into the surrounding Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Alberta. Cooperation will be needed from the surrounding provincial governments to report data findings as well. The current BC wood bison population is only at a count of a mere 120 specimens. 2 herds surround the Liard River area. There's about 50 bison in the Nordquist Flats herd, 30 in the Nahanni herd, and about 40 in the Ithithan Lake herd. As seen in this map, the significant change from historical populations to current populations is drastic. To help initiate a healthy increase in the wood bison numbers over the coming years, a tangible management system must be implemented. Having over 50% of wild bison being infected with tuberculosis and brucellosis puts emphasis on the need to keep BC's populations free of disease. This means consistent monitoring for the treatment or removal of infected members is crucial. Climate change also plays a factor in the persistence of the wood bison, as changing landscapes can affect the food sources. The replacement of grassland species with more invasives is something that needs to be considered for monitoring. Along with the change of the climate brings changes of range for the winter tick. It is predicted it will move higher in elevation to find the ideal habitat, and this could adversely affect the health of our fragile wood bison populations. It takes a long time for them to reproduce, because males wait until they're 6 years of age to start breeding. Also, the gestation period for females is 270 to 300 days, which is significantly longer than people. The population has been devastated due to the overhunting in the mid to late 1800s by European colonizers. This was leaving approximately 200 bison remaining in Canada. Though the population has increased since the 1950s, but it is still nowhere near its original size. Ways this grant will be spent if we receive the funding will be as follows. It will be spent on management teams that will each be assigned to the 3 BC herds, covering the costs of transportation, technology, and pay. It will also cover the costs of surveys for tick presence in the surrounding ecosystem and on the bison, as well as monitoring the level of invasive species such as knapweed and cheatgrass. Testing for the bison's ability also to digest these species would be beneficial. Keeping this staple species of the BC North will greatly benefit the grassland ecosystem and the food web this species fits into.